ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 15, Description of the Kingdom of God. So we are at text 45. So we continue with the purport.
5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna recommended yoga practice to Arjuna, but Arjuna frankly expressed his inability to follow the stringent rules and regulations of the yoga system. One should be very practical in every field of activities and should not waste his valuable time in practicing useless gymnastic feats in the name of yoga. Real yoga is to search out the four-handed supersoul within one's heart and see him perpetually in meditation. Such continued meditation is called samadhi, and the object of this meditation is the four-handed Narayana, with bodily decorations as described in this chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. If, however, one wants to meditate upon something void or impersonal, it will take a very long time before he achieves success in yoga practice. We cannot concentrate our mind on something void or impersonal. Real yoga is to fix the mind on the form of the Lord, the four-handed Narayana, who is sitting in everyone's heart. By meditation, one can understand that God is seated within one's heart. Even if one does not know it, God is seated within the heart of everyone. Not only he is seated in the heart of the human being, but he is also within the hearts of cats and dogs. Bhagavad Gita certifies this fact by the declaration of the Lord, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hridayeshi. Supreme controller of the world is seated in the heart of everyone. Not only is he in everyone's heart, but he is also present within the atom. No place is vacant or devoid of the presence of the Lord. That is the statement of Isha Upanishad. God is present everywhere, and his right of proprietorship applies to everything. The feature of the Lord by which he is present everywhere is called Paramatma. Atma means the individual soul, and Paramatma means the individual super soul. Both Atma and Paramatma are individual persons. The difference between Atma and Paramatma is that Atma or the soul is present only in a particular body, whereas the Paramatma is present everywhere. In this connection, the example of the sun is very nice. An individual person may be situated in one place, but the sun, even though a similar individual entity, is present on the head of every individual person. In Bhagavad Gita, this is explained. Therefore, even though the qualities of all entities, including the Lord, are equal, the super soul is different from the individual soul by quantitative power of expansion. The Lord or the super soul can expand himself into millions of different forms, whereas the individual soul cannot do so. The super soul being seated
Yeah,
in
so
everyone's
this is
Krishna.
5,000 years ago, Srila Prabhupada says, yoga practice was recommended by Lord Sri Krishna to Arjuna. one can see the Arjuna's qualification. Later, Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that all these good qualities, my dear Arjuna, you are born with. So Arjuna is extremely qualified. Conditions were far more favorable. But Arjuna very flatly refuses this yoga system. Bhagavad Gita 6.33. Arjuna uvacha yoyam yogastvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham na paschami chanchalatvam sthitim sthiram. O Madhusudan, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. And then Arjuna says, Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadrudam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkuram. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is far more difficult than controlling the wind. And what is Krishna's reply there? Sri Bhagavan Vacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Manodur Nigraham Chalam Abhyasenu to Kaunteya Vairagyena Chagriyate. Oh Arjuna, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and detachment. So Srila Prabhupada says here, what the point Srila Prabhupada makes here is, Arjuna is far more qualified, the conditions are far more favorable 5,000 years ago. Still, Arjuna is flatly refusing this yoga system. And Lord Krishna also, he says, yeah, what you say is true. So Prabhupada says, do not waste your valuable time in simply doing some gymnastics. Of course, you should do yoga every day, but that is not the goal of your life, right? So sometimes, even as a devotee, we may start doing something, and there is always a chance of getting carried over by some things, upadharmas especially. We have seen devotees getting carried away by excessive Vastu Shastra, or Jyotisha, or Ayurveda, or music. Of course, these are very important limbs, but Rupa Goswami defines bhakti should not be covered with anya bilashita shunyam jnana karma adi anavritam. We should know that much only we apply and then move on with our regular devotional service. We are not carried away by performing some 6 hours of yoga or 4 hours of music, unless and until that's your the profession in itself, right? Like Varsha Mataji here she is a yoga teacher. That's okay for her because that is her profession. But the Upadharma should not cloud over one's devotional service. This is very, very important. So some of the things are like Vastu, music, Sangeet, Ayurveda, yoga. What else? Okay, you understand, right? So we should apply the suitable principles, but we should make sure that life is not covered over by these things, unless and until it is our profession. Okay, somebody's profession, then it is fine. Like Parameshwari's profession is Ayurveda, then she can practice Ayurveda. That is another thing. But unless and until it is, so this is very important. And therefore, Prabhupada says, do not waste your time simply doing some gymnastics and calling it as a yoga. No, it is not yoga. It was not possible even for Arjuna. So the recommended system is performing Bhakti Yoga, focusing one's mind on Supreme Lord Shri Nārāyaṇa or Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And the Lord is situated in everybody's heart. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Rid Eshe Arjuna Tishtati. Not in everybody's heart, the heart of all the human beings, all the birds, trees, animals, aquatics, everywhere Lord is situated. Not only there, the Lord is situated in every atom and the space between the atom. Andantarastha paramanu, chayantarastham, govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. No place is vacant or void. Everything. And this is Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita purports also that Jiva is called as Sarvagataha. Why? Because Atma is Sarvagata means Atma is everywhere. It is not that something is vacant, like the modern day understanding of astronomy, that except Earth, everything is vacant. So that is not recommended in the scriptures. There is a difference between Atma and Paramatma. Atma is the individual soul, Paramatma is super soul. Atma is limited to his own kshetra, his own body. We are conscious of our own body. Paramatma is all pervading. Atma and Paramatma, they are qualitatively one, Satchidananda, but quantitatively and spread wise, they are different. And Srila Prabhupada gives, there is a nice example of the sun. Although the sun is also an individual entity, but the sun is spread over the Brahmanda, right? So this is, and therefore one should know this qualitative oneness and difference simultaneously, which is called as Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. Yeah, please continue.
The super soul, being seated in everyone's heart, can witness everyone's activities, past, present, and future. In the Upanishad, the super soul is described as being seated with the individual soul as friend and witness. As a friend, the Lord is always anxious to get back his friend, the individual soul, and bring him back home, back to Godhead. As a witness, he is the bestower of all benedictions, and he endows each individual with the result of his actions. The super soul gives the individual soul all facilities to achieve whatever he desires to enjoy in this material world. Suffering is a reaction to the living entity's propensity to try to lord it over the material world. But the Lord instructs his friend, the individual soul, who is also his son, to give up all other engagements and simply surrender unto him for personal bliss and an eternal life full of knowledge. This is the last instruction of Bhagavad Gita, the most authorized and widely read book on all varieties of yoga. Thus, the last word of Bhagavad Gita is the last word in the perfection of yoga. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that a person who is always absorbed in Krishna consciousness is the topmost yogi. What is Krishna consciousness? As the individual soul is present by his consciousness throughout his entire body, so the super soul or Paramatma is present throughout the whole creation by super consciousness. This super conscious energy is imitated by the individual soul who has limited consciousness. I can understand what is going on within my limited body, but I cannot feel what is going on in another's body. I am present throughout my body by my consciousness, but my consciousness is not present in another's body. The super soul or Paramatma, however, being present everywhere and within everyone, is also conscious of everyone's existence. The theory that the soul and the super soul are one is not acceptable because it is not confirmed by authoritative Vedic literature. The individual soul's consciousness cannot act in super consciousness. This super consciousness can be achieved, however, by dovetailing individual consciousness with the consciousness of the Supreme. This dovetailing process is called surrender or Krishna consciousness. From the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, we learn very clearly that Arjuna in the beginning did not want to fight with his brothers and relatives, but after understanding Bhagavad Gita, he dovetailed his consciousness with the super consciousness of Krishna. He was then in Krishna consciousness. A person in full Krishna
Yeah. So
consciousness
here,
is Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada explains the super soul is seated in everybody's heart and is acting as the friend and guide, the witness. Upadrishtacha, Anumantacha, Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwara. So he's Upadrishta and he is Anumanta. He is giving the permission. Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwara. He is friend and guide. He is bestower of Surudam Sarvadehina. He is the bestower of all the benedictions, and he endows everyone with the result of their actions. Karmana Daivanetrena Jantur Deho Papadyate. So this is the Lord situated in everybody's, every individual's heart. And we have seen where all he is situated in the previous paragraph. Right. He provides all the facilities. He notes every desire and he provides the facility. Somebody has a desire to fly, then whenever the accumulated karmas, and then accordingly a suitable body is given, and the Lord says, "Go, beta, fly. Try to enjoy your life as a flying bird." Somebody wants to swim excessively, always surfing, sea surfing, bungee dive, and the Lord keeps on giving those different bodies, as on when the living entity qualifies, deserves to receive those bodies. And then finally, Bahunam Janmanamante, after many, many lifetimes, the soul is tired of material enjoyment. He says, "No, my dear Lord, now I want to become your devotee." And then such a living entity will be connected to bona fide spiritual master in bona fide parampara. And the Lord thus acts as Upadrishtacha Anumantacha. Right. then why there is a suffering? The suffering is the result of individual living entities' propensity to try to lord it over material nature, right? And but the Lord instructs in Bhagavad Gita something else. What is the instruction of Bhagavad Gita? The instruction of Bhagavad Gita is whatever is your psychophysical nature, purify it and engage it in devotional service. We don't have to outrightly change many things. Sthane sthitah. We have to do a little bit of adjustment, perform the whole activity in the mood of Krishna consciousness and offer results to the Supreme Lord. And therefore, the final instruction of Bhagavad Gita is this: Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vrajaha. This is the final instruction which Prabhupada says, which is most authorized and widely read book. And the same Bhagavad Gita, Lord says that such Krishna conscious devotee is the topmost yogi. Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktamo matah. That he is the topmost of a devotee who is in touch with super consciousness. So individual consciousness, Prabhupada says, is limited to individual kshetra. Like somebody, you go to a friend who is very, very sick. Say he has met with an accident and he is admitted in some, ortho hospital, and the leg is up and traction is given and going to. We know he's suffering, but we are not suffering his suffering. We can understand, we can empathize, we can sympathize, we can imagine, but we are not, we are feeling bad, but we are not suffering his suffering. Let us understand this very well. Because our consciousness is limited to my body, and somebody else's consciousness is limited to his or her own body. But the Supreme Consciousness pervades through all the bodies. This is the difference between Atma and Paramatma. This is Bhagavad Gita 13.1, where Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Vibhaga, Yoga is being explained. That individual soul, his Kshetra is only his body. For Paramatma, every body, everybody, and everywhere is the Kshetra of Paramatma. But one can still tap in this super consciousness, by Prabhupada says, by dovetailing the individual consciousness with the consciousness of the Supreme. What this means is that when we make Krishna's desires as our desires, we are in that super consciousness. Correct. And this dovetailing process is called as surrender. So what is surrender? Lord Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight. And Arjuna said, no, how can I fight? And then he gave 10 reasons. So I cannot fight this. There will be Varna Sankar, there will be Papa. How can I do this? But when, after understanding Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna dovetailed his consciousness to Krishna's consciousness, then what happened is Arjuna attained tremendous results. Correct? Later we'll see Arjuna was reluctant to fight, thinking that Arjuna's plan was that we will suffer in forest and let all these people at least enjoy whatever they are doing. They are my relative. Krishna's plan was to send them back home, back to Godhead. 64 crore warriors were sent in back home, back to Godhead in simply 18 days of fight. And when Arjuna, he dovetailed his consciousness in Krishna consciousness, he became instrument for such a great, amazing preaching. Tathaiva channe naraloka veera. And therefore it is very important, greatly important to have the importance of surrender. When Arjuna surrendered to Krishna, then Arjuna became instrument in achieving huge results, which was Krishna's plan. Next.
A person in full Krishna consciousness acts by the dictation of Krishna. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, dictation is received through the transparent medium of the spiritual master. When one is sufficiently trained and acts in submissive faith and love for Krishna under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master, the dovetailing process becomes more firm and accurate. This stage of devotional service by the devotee in Krishna consciousness is the most perfect stage of the yoga system. At this stage, Krishna or the Super Soul dictates from within, while from without, the devotee is helped by the spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of Krishna. From within, he helps the devotee as Chaitya, for he is seated within the heart of everyone. Understanding that God is seated within everyone's heart is not, however, sufficient. One has to be acquainted with God from both within and without, and one must take dictation from within and without to act in Krishna consciousness. This is the highest perfectional stage of the human form of life and the topmost perfection of all yoga. For a perfect yogi, there are 8 kinds of superachievements. One can become lighter than air. One can become smaller than the atom. One can become bigger than a mountain. And one can achieve whatever he desires. One can control like the Lord, and so on. But when one rises to the perfectional stage of receiving dictation from the Lord, that is greater than any stage of material achievements above mentioned. The breathing exercise of the yoga system, which is generally practiced, is just the beginning of meditation. Is just the beginning. Meditation on the super soul is just another step forward. But to obtain direct contact with the super soul and take dictation from him is the highest perfectional stage. The breathing exercises of meditation practice were very difficult even 5,000 years ago. Otherwise, Arjuna would not have rejected the proposal of Krishna that he adopt this system. This age of Kali is called fallen age. In this age, people in general are short living and very slow to understand self realization or spiritual life. They are mostly unfortunate, and therefore, if someone is a little bit interested in self realization, he is likely to be misguided by so many frauds. The only way to realize the perfect stage of the yoga is to follow the principles of Bhagavad Gita as practiced by the Lord Chaitanya. This is the simplest and highest perfection of yoga practice. Lord Chaitanya demonstrated this Krishna consciousness yoga system in a practical manner simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna as prescribed in Vedanta, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and many important Puranas.
Yes. So Srila Prabhupada explains here that a person in full Krishna consciousness, he acts under the dictation of the Supreme Lord. And that is being exactly done by Arjuna. And recent example we see that was exactly Srila Prabhupada personally did the same thing. Right. And this is the beginning. In the beginning, one will receive direction through the transparent via medium, that is the spiritual master. And when one is sufficiently trained, then he can be guided by the Lord from within. Right. And this is the stage, this is the most perfectional stage of yoga system. And further, Srila Prabhupada describes about, that how the Supreme Lord guides the devotee as Chaitya Guru from within, who is the Paramatma from within, Antaryami. A yogi can attain the Ashtasiddhi, but devotee is hardly interested in any of these Ashtasiddhis that we have seen elaborately. Example of Rasika Thakur, we have seen Rasikananda Thakur. But then a devotee is interested in becoming instrument of the Supreme Lord, just as it was done by Arjuna himself. Prabhupada says, especially in the age of Kali, which is very famous for being short-lived, Kalau dosha nidhe rajan, it is ocean of different kinds of faults. One should not go for a life which is very troublesome, right? And therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Lord, personally appears as Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and recommends the process which is prescribed in different literature. And that is the practical process of Sankirtana Yagya. Yagyai Sankirtana Praya. Yeah, please continue.
The largest number of Indians follow this yoga process, and in the United States, it is gradually spreading in many cities. It is very easy and practical for this age, especially for those who are serious about success in yoga. No other process of yoga can be successful in this age. The meditation process was possible in the golden age, Satya Yuga, because people in that age used to live for hundreds of thousands of years. If one wants success in practical yoga practice, it is advised that he take the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and he will actually feel himself making progress. In Bhagavad Gita, this practice of Krishna consciousness is prescribed as Raj Vidya, or the king of all erudition. Those who have taken to this most sublime bhakti yoga system, who practice devotional service in transcendental love of Krishna, can testify to its happy and easy execution. The four sages Sanaka, Sanātana, Sanandana, and Sanat-kumāra also became attracted by the features of the Lord and the transcendental aroma of the dust of his lotus feet, as already described in verse 43. Yoga necessitates controlling the senses, and Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness is the process of purifying the senses. When the senses are purified, they are automatically controlled. One cannot stop the activities of the senses by artificial means, but if one purifies the senses by engaging in the service of the Lord, the senses not only can be controlled from rubbish engagement, but can be engaged in the Lord's transcendental service, as aspired to by the four sages Sanak, Sanatan, Sanandana, and Sanat-kumāra. Krishna consciousness is not therefore a manufactured concoction of the speculative mind. It is the process enjoined in Bhagavad Gita 9.34, Manmana bhava madbhakto maddajimam namaskaru. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada concludes this that India, the largest number of Indians are following this process of Bhakti Yoga. And in United States also, it is gradually being propagated in many countries as we are opening many centers across the world, across United States and everywhere. Right now, ISKCON has more than 1,000 centers. And the Bhavishyavani is that Prithviti Ache Yada Nagaradigram Sarvatra Prachar. So, Sarvatra Prachar. Not everybody will become devotee, but everybody in Kali Yuga will surely get opportunity to become a devotee. To become or not is up to them, but they will surely get the opportunity. So the Prabhupada says this is the yuga for this age. We know this. Okay, beautiful words. Krite yadhyayato Vishnum, Tretayam yajato makhai, Dvapare paricharyayam, Kalau tad Hari Kirtana. And this simply can be attained by Hari Kirtan and especially chanting the holy names Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And this Vidya is called as Raj Vidya Rajaguhyam, Pavitram Idamuttamam. And this is the king of all the knowledge and erudition. This is the most sublime Bhakti Yoga process. And the four sages, Sanak, Sanatan, Sanandan, Sanat-kumāra, they got attracted by the personal features of the Supreme Lord, right? The beauty of the Lord, the character of the Lord, the Lakshana of the Lord, and then Kinjil Kamishra Tulasi, transcendental aroma of the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. And being thus attracted, being thus engaging one's senses is the essence of devotional service. So what is devotional service? Devotional service is not some mindless speculation on something void. Devotional service means, Prabhupada says, it's a practical activity. Sarva upadhi nirmuktam, tat paratvena nirmalam, rishikesha sevanam, bhakti ruchyate. That one cannot stop the activities, Prabhupada says, but one can engage one's activities. So we do not try to become desireless or become actionless. We try to do actions in Krishna consciousness and thus purify our senses. And this is how the Krishna consciousness is based on. Krishna consciousness is therefore is not something manufactured concoction of a speculative mind. This is not some this guru, that guru speculating some this kriya, that kriya. No. This is coming in from Bhagavad Gita and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It is the process that is enjoined in Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyajimam namaskuru. This is the process. Not, you take some fancy name and, you create some fancy idea somewhere and try to propagate something. So this is everlasting principles of Bhagavad Gita and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.